This is the Dark Horse Podcast at Podcast Row, July 29th. My guest today is Lisa Wang. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So, I don't even know where to start. How many interviews have you done today? This is like speed dating, right?
This is actually my second one, so I'm still pretty fresh.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay, you got a bunch more to go.
Yeah.
Have you ever done so many interviews in one day?
Uh,
Long ones, 40 minutes.
Not interviews per se, but I've certainly talked for hours and hours and hours and been pitching and telling my story and asking people questions. So the marathon itself is not new to me.
How do you, when you tell your story so many times, how does it stay fresh?
I think if I'm
Don't you get tired of repeating yourself?
I'm constantly evolving, and I think I'm constantly refining my own beliefs and values and mental models of the world. And so I think actually with each interview, I actually learn a bit more about myself and with the right questions that are being asked to me.
Okay. So that's a hint that I better ask good questions, right? So I was telling you before, this is a more, I guess, chill kind of podcast.
Chill vibe for me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I feel like I'm already chilling out.
Yeah, you might fall asleep. But Dark Horse Podcast, the theme is, I was telling you before our interview, underdogs, just people with a great backstory that succeeded against all odds. So what are you working on today? What's your main focus?
Well, it's a really interesting inflection point for me to have that question being asked, because I just recently sold my company, She Works, and that was my baby for about 5 years. And as any entrepreneur will know, and perhaps any parent, I wouldn't know because I'm not yet a parent, but when you have a baby, it's your entire life, and you see the world through the lens of that. And so She Works was really focused on helping female entrepreneurs get access to mentors and investors. So I really did look at the world very deeply through a gender lens, and clarifying different parts of the woman's journey to understand how to most proactively solve those challenges. And now with the acquisition, the place where I'm at now is I can suddenly open up my mind so much further in terms of not only looking at it from a gender lens. And I think that in this transition period, I took a lot of time to think about my own strengths, what I'm really passionate about, in addition to what I've been for the last 5 years, and where they coalesce. And one of the things I realized that I've always loved, I was a literature major in college, is that I love stories. And I love stories for the reason that they dig into the deepest, darkest part of human psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone in some ways is a character in their own story. So what I'm doing now is specifically, with the fundamental belief that there's only two types of capital. There's financial capital and there's social capital. And it used to be that if you had financial capital, you could do anything. You could have influence, you could have power. But with the digital age and technology, social capital, which I define as a combination of social networks and social influence, so it's now both online and offline, you can actually leverage social capital for many other things. In fact, that could actually be even more valuable than financial capital. And so what I'm looking at more and more is who's getting attention. In today's world, the people who are getting attention are often influencers, or who have a bad rap of shameless self-promotion. And on the other side, you have people who are doing great work, impactful work, who have a higher purpose, but they don't like promoting themselves, or they feel uncomfortable sharing their story. And they think if they do work, hopefully they'll get recognized. And so my mission now is to help those people, and I coined a term called social leaders. Social leaders are people who leverage social influence and social networks to make a meaningful social impact on society.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mission is to help those social leaders tell their story, amplify it, so that they can actually leverage their personal brand to create meaningful impact.
Is it also educating those people that follow these type of influencers? Because I feel like a lot of these followers on social media, they're looking for like the Gary V type people, and I find there's so many people like him, and they're preaching the same thing. And I was thinking about it yesterday, like where are those people that just have a different voice?
Yeah. Well,
But is it also educating people, like maybe not only listen to like those people speaking the loudest and yelling at you like you need to hustle 24
yeah.
7.
Well, I actually was thinking about this the other day of, what, with total respect to what Gary's built, there's a narrative that has primarily followed a masculine track of success, which is, hustle and be great and succeed and make money and just do it, don't think. And
There's that. Sorry to cut you off, but there's a comic that I know. His name is Tim Dillon.
yeah,
You should check him out. He did this amazing video.
yeah,
He has a podcast. I think it's called like Kill Tim Dillon or something. But he played Gary V's video or audio, like kill it. And Tim Dillon is like commenting on everything that Gary V said. So kill what? Like, what do you want me to kill? He's like hustle 24/7. Like what? Like
yeah.
he's like I'm ill. I haven't left my house in 2 days. Am I supposed to hustle? He just
Yeah.
just completely tore him apart.
So there's two parts, two threads I want to go off of from there. One is about the promotion and the loud voice, and the second one is about hustle. So remind me about something.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is, that narrative of, kill it, crush it, be great. It's like, how can I be great if I don't even feel like I'm good enough?
Mm-hmm.
And so where we've gotten to is that person who's speaking is almost speaking from a place of condescension, of like, it's so easy, just quit your job,
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, it's not that easy.
But a lot of people buy into that.
And exactly, and I think that there's this, what it's creating is, narcissism way where it's like, now just listen to me, and it's the same simple message. And there's a difference, and I think, in terms of a new leader that needs to appear, and this is a lot of how I think about my messaging, which is, it is absolutely important to promote your work if it's for the betterment of society and it can motivate and improve other people's lives. But the difference between saying, just hustle harder and do it, which is, I think, more of the self-promotional, look at me, it was so easy, you should just do it. And the way to actually do it that's truly empowering is, here's what's possible, right? And now I'm going to show you step by step how to do it. I'm going to take your hand and bring you on this journey with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know and acknowledge that it's hard, but don't let your self-doubt kill your own potential. And acknowledging that it's hard, acknowledging that there's self-doubt and fear of failure and fear of rejection, and being open and vulnerable about your own journey as a leader, I think is really important to humanize that process, which is exactly what's missing in a lot of this. Really, it's a masculine entrenched discourse of like more money, more materials, more.
And just a general lack of authenticity.
Yeah, so that's where part of the work that I'm doing is really, I want to help those social leaders learn how to brand themselves, learn how to tell their story in a deep and authentic and vulnerable way that lifts people up with them on their journey. So it's both the internal work for them as well as the external communication of how to do it to serve their constituency. And so that's the one side. And the second side was the second track that you had mentioned about this guy saying, well, how can I hustle if I'm ill? Is also something that I've really started to reflect upon, and how I changed my lifestyle in the last few months. So as someone who, if you look at my resume or LinkedIn, it's kind of like straight A student, Ivy League, national champion, hedge fund, serial entrepreneur, successful exit. And even though all of that has happened, I would say that there was this underlying feeling of it's never good enough, which is why I started my Enoughness podcast. And also, there was a consistent trend of never taking care of myself, never really eating properly, never really taking time to relax, never really taking time to actually create a consistent sleeping schedule. All these basic things that you need as a healthy, functioning human that I think just really ambitious people forget about. And having done that for decades,
Now you feel like you finally found that balance.
Yeah, so in the last few months, I started to I realized this fundamental truth that I want to start like really opening people's eyes to, which is that if you respect yourself, people cannot help but respect you. And so what does respecting yourself mean? Respecting yourself means taking care of yourself. It means feeding the fuel that is going to help you function as a leader, because quite honestly, if you die, your company dies. And so what that meant for me was being able to say no more often, not feeling the pressure to go out just because someone asked me to, having clear deadlines, clear boundaries just around like how many times I eat out per week, like the amount of days I drink alcohol, and those little tweaks, and also I started Krav Maga training, so Israeli military defense training. So I got into again a really rigorous training schedule, and I think with that a lot of things started falling into line, and I went back to that kind of disciplined athlete lifestyle that I used to have, which was really about putting my body into peak performance, which then brought my mental clarity into a peak as well.
What's your underlying purpose? Like when you get up every morning, like what gets you out of bed? What gets you excited?
I think that I just have this feeling, this intuitive sense that I was meant to impact billions of people. And
were you like that from early on, from your childhood?
Early on, I think when I was younger, I had a feeling that I was meant to be successful, which is a more selfish pursuit. But I think you have to be selfish for a period of time before you can start thinking of others, right? You have to provide and satiate that own feeling of significance in yourself. So I've noticed that I love self-reflection. I love digging into the deepest corners of my trauma, pain, past experiences, and wondering about what lessons I can learn from that, and then immediately how I can share them. And of course, the sharing part is where the self-doubt, like everyone else creeps in, like, oh, will people really listen? Does it really matter? But I think I always overcome that by thinking, as I see so many people who have potential and talent self-limit due to self-limiting beliefs or self-limiting behaviors, and I see how, I am naturally extremely introverted. Naturally, I never felt like I fit in, and it's almost like I would speak by working harder. And all of those insecurities I overcame, and plus, when you see me, I'm a petite Asian female. I look really young for my age, and I used to let that hinder me. And when I was able to finally mentally surpass a lot of these self-limiting beliefs and behaviors, I got into a place where I felt so powerful. Powerful because I no longer cared about what other people thought in relation to my dream and my potential. So it's, I think it's stupid to say like, oh, I don't care what anybody thinks. But there's a way to not care about what the naysayers are thinking, what the haters are thinking, and to know deep down how rooted you are in your own purpose and your goal and your vision for yourself, that no one can really sway you. And
how do you get to that point?
You get to that point by intense self-reflection. I know a lot of people who are very successful when you look at how much money they've made, their apartments they're living in, maybe they have like great looking partners, and they're all doing it for external validation. They're doing it for a preconceived notion of what success should look like. And then they hit a certain age, usually I've seen like a 40s, 50s mark for men and women, where they think like, oh shoot, like wait, I don't actually know what my purpose is. I'm not actually happy. Like, how did I get here? And then they're lost. And for me, it's like, well, and then I ask them why, and they're like, well, I guess I just didn't even question, what this path was or what was success, and I just did it. And so I think when you take the time to reflect and you say, okay, here's what the external world says, and here's deeply ingrained cultural, historical, societal notions of greatness and success, and does that really match with me? And like, quite frankly, there have been, the past few years, there are many weekends where instead of going out, I would sit in a co-working space and I would just write. I would ask myself questions. I would write to myself. And actually, can I read you, like, most recently some notes that I'd written to myself? So I was in the subway, and I was post acquisition, and I was like, wait, am I doing this next thing just to do it and take action because I'm used to go, or is it actually aligned
what you really
with,
want.
yeah, my thing? So I wrote a note called Big Life Questions,
Mm-hmm.
and this is like things I had to ask myself, and I wrote, are you doing it to just do it or because it serves your higher purpose? What is your higher purpose? What is the best case scenario? What is the worst case scenario? And then what are you optimizing for? What are you really, really optimizing for?
What does that mean?
So, are you optimizing for money?
Mm-hmm.
Are you optimizing for, people not saying anything bad about you?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you optimizing for happiness, but is your happiness conflated with external notions of success?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like, or sometimes people are optimizing for the right lifestyle, right? They want to build a lifestyle company versus a venture scalable company. And there was a period when I thought, like, I want to build a company that raises a Series A and a Series B and a Series D and then IPOs and then goes public, and then I took a moment and I was like, wait a minute, is that what I really want, or do I want that only because it's currently being glamorized in the media?
Mm-hmm.
And if I blindly followed that, the former, I would be optimizing for the current narrative,
Mm-hmm.
not my own.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Back to the new company that you're starting. How do you find those storytellers, or those new voices that you want amplified?
Well, they are my friends.
Okay.
They are in my network. They are. So quite frankly, one of the things I did was I emailed out my network. I just said, hey guys, life update.
Mm-hmm.
SheWorks just got acquired, and here's how I'd like to help you. If you're someone who is working on something meaningful, and you feel like you have a story to tell, you want to speak on stages, you want to learn how to get media to pay attention to your work, you've thought about building a personal brand because you think it could uplift others, I'd love to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I set up some consultations on my website, lisawang.co, and like within 12 hours, like all the slots were filled. So I spent a week having long conversations, deep existential conversations about why the fears that were really holding people back from telling their stories.
When you mentioned before that you would sit in a co-working space and work on weekends, did you feel like that was something you had to do in order to be successful, or did you really enjoy it and want to spend your time working on weekends?
It came from a place where, so for the longest time, and this goes back to the enoughness concept, as I, through my entire childhood, checking off boxes that fill the success bucket, the more things I achieved, the greater the gap there was between how the world perceived me and how I felt about myself. And that as that gap became bigger, I felt more and more helpless because people would keep saying to me, oh, this is great, like, congratulations, life must be awesome for you. And I couldn't genuinely respond in a way that felt authentic. And I was like, who am I to complain, But when I finally got to the point, I was like, I can't just because other people say that my life is awesome, that doesn't negate how I feel. How I feel is also valid.
Mm-hmm.
And if I feel like inadequate and not enough, I need to explore that. And the reason I felt like I needed to do that self-reflection was I saw my potential through other people's eyes. And I saw how powerful of a leader I could become. And the only thing blocking me was this imposter syndrome thing. And I was like, I need to do everything I can to get through and like punch through this wall. Otherwise, the only thing that is going to continue to stop me is me. And that means like the answer is somewhere inside here.
Mm-hmm. This company that you have now, do you have co-founders, or is it just you?
It's just me.
And in your previous company?
Yeah, so in my previous company, I had a co-founder. Actually, I also started Late Night Munchies
Mm-hmm.
startup as my first startup, and solving my own pain point. And I had co-founders in the past, and one of the things I think the biggest mistakes that I made is partnering with co-founders because you're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And like the first time I brought in a co-founder was because I wanted to apply to an accelerator, and I read in the FAQ,
Mm-hmm.
you have a higher chance of success if you of getting into this accelerator if you get a co-founder. So I had a contractor, and I was like, she did design. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
why
Mm-hmm.
not? Like, just be my co-founder. You don't. Now I know you don't just like randomly and like do that.
Do you have a
People
preference?
like,
Do you like working on your own, or would you rather a partner?
After going through a couple startups, I did split with my co-founder, and she works. And for me, I think especially at this point in my life where I have such a clear vision of what I want to build and the impact I want to make, that for me, the best path is to be a solo founder.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the past, I didn't yet have that conviction. I didn't yet have that vision. And I think a lot of times, people will supplement their weaknesses or their insecurity with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
It's so similar to relationships, right? You have two, like, not whole people trying to create a whole relationship. And really, the best scenarios, you have two whole, mature, developed, self-reflective people who come into a relationship, whether that's business or personal, and are able to say, to be adults and say, here's my vision, let's continue to try and align it, do what's best for our baby, and if there's conflict, here's how we resolve it. And so I think for me, I quite honestly very rarely meet people who have taken the time to do that. And so on the flip side, like, I know that I'm young and there's a lot of experience that I haven't had, and I can benefit from people who have had those experiences, been successful in the route that I want to go. So I surround myself with great advisors, and as I do that, I think similarly with the going against the grain of what people say is typical, it's not about hiring a ton of people for me either. It's about patience and intention in how I build this next company, and bringing in people who are fully aligned with my values and the culture that I want to build.
Do you have anything on your list that you want to build in the future? Is there something that you want to do after this?
I see what I'm building. So what I talked about today was somewhat of an underlying philosophy about stories and the types of leaders. It really stemmed from when I started saying, like, I have this deep feeling that I was meant to impact a large part of the world. I realized that I can't solve every problem in the world. That would be naive to think. And so the next best thing is to empower and give a platform to the people who are solving each of these individual problems.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like as a leader, kind of helping the other leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And in that way, that's kind of the way in which I can affect billions. And I think that that's going to be a lifelong a lifelong journey of really changing the narrative of leadership, helping young leaders especially find their purpose, and their purpose should be bigger than themselves and their salary and their immediate families. So yeah, I think really what the world needs is better, more purpose-driven, intentional leaders, and so that's going to be what I'm working on in my life.
Who are a few people that you look up to these days?
People that I look up to. So I have role models of the types of people I want to aspire to be in terms of type of impact, scale of impact.
Who give me a few examples.
So a combination of Oprah, Tony Robbins, and Dale Carnegie. And I'm not necessarily speaking to all of their underlying ethics or anything else, but I really respect Oprah for her ability to draw out deeply personal stories and valuable lessons from everyone that she interviews and creating space for them. I respect Tony for his ability to bring a voice to empowerment at such a scale and to create a successful business around that. And I respect Dale Carnegie for really changing the way that people thought about interactions, the underlying psychology of interactions, and then creating an institute for training leaders.
Mm-hmm. And who are some people that have been closely associated with you personally in your professional life that have been like mentors?
So I guess I'll name a few.
It could be a family member, a friend.
Yeah.
Who's been a big influence?
Definitely my dad. My dad has been a huge influence on me. I think like every child, there's a fraught relationship in the beginning. So my dad was really the one who, he immigrated from China, came here with pretty much nothing, no English, and he always likes to say that he's deeply risk averse. And I think ironically actually took the biggest risk of all, coming to a new country, and understandably was really focused on growing and then stability to be able to support a family. So it was a different type of risk. But I think that he was always the kind of more disciplinarian, had really high expectations of me, and I think when I was younger, I kind of felt like I was tiptoeing on eggshells, and it was never good enough.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I'm an adult, we're both adults, and I have clearly, it's almost like my train has gone completely off the tracks, and there's just no way I'm going back to this typical corporate stable path anymore. And he's accepted that, and now we can kind of have this conversation about true leadership. And in fact, I think a lot of ways now I'm teaching my dad lessons.
Back to social capital for a second. What are some examples that people can do to get that social capital, to build it?
So one of the first programs I'm launching is around what I call the 4 Ps of personal branding, and that's positioning, packaging, presenting, and promoting. And it really starts with a lot of people I know will say, okay, personal branding. So should I do Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook? And if they're asking that question, I immediately know that they have no idea, and they're asking it from the wrong direction, because they're thinking about it from the tactics. And here's what's wrong with most things. Like most things, people are just like, tactically, what do I do so I can grow and like transact? And the 4 Ps program that I created is really around the first and foremost. Personal branding is about who the hell are you? Why are you doing the work? And once you figure that out, then why are you the person in particular who can speak on this work? And that really digs into creating your story of self.
And finding your voice.
Yeah, finding your voice, knowing the look and feel of your brand, the tone of voice, the words you use and don't use. Just like a company has a pitch deck and a brand deck, you as an individual should have your brand deck. And that's something that I've created that I don't know anybody else who's created that for themselves. And that's maybe why they haven't had a level of success that I've had, but this is what I want to teach people to do. It's like, you should be able to know who you are down to like the words you use and don't use, so that if you do want to scale yourself, then you can give that to an assistant, right? Who can write articles on your behalf and say, okay, she definitely like this. She's not vernacular. She uses these types of words. So I think really starting with that, and then honing in on your topic and what you care about, and creating your pillar content, and then from there, you can start scaling and just know the topics you're going to write about or blog about, whatever.
And before we wrap up, where can people find you?
So my Instagram and Twitter is Lisa Wang Wins, and my website where you can find more about personal branding is lisawang.co.
Awesome. Lisa, thanks for coming in here today. It's great chatting with you.
Thanks.
We're good.
Cool.
Thank you.